It happened so fast, too fast for anyone to stop him. The living room echoed with the heavy thud of a human body hitting the marble floor. Blood trickled from the corner of Evelyn's lips as her eyes rolled back, her frail frame collapsing beside the shattered flower vase. The room fell silent, except for the slow ticking of the wall clock. Daniel stood over her, chest heaving, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. His palm burned from the force of the blow he'd just landed, the one that sent his wife into a coma she might never wake from. He didn't mean to go that far. Or maybe deep down he did. The lights flickered in their small Abuja apartment as if the universe itself was punishing him. Evelyn lay still, motionless. Daniel stared at her limp body, his once beautiful, loyal wife, now lying lifeless on the ground. "Evelyn!" he called out, voice trembling. No response. He knelt, shaking her shoulders gently. "Evelyn, get up, I didn't mean it like that. Please." Nothing. His breath quickened. "Oh God, what have I done?" he muttered, his voice cracking. Panic set in, but so did fear. Fear of what people would say, fear of the police, fear of himself. Suddenly, the door burst open. Their 7-year-old daughter Maya rushed in, her school uniform dusty and her small backpack dangling off one shoulder. She froze when she saw her mother on the floor. "Mommy!" Maya screamed, dropping her bag and running toward her mother. Daniel staggered backward. "Maya! Maya! Wait! Don't touch her!" But the little girl was already beside Evelyn, shaking her arm and crying, "Mommy, wake up! Mommy, please wake up!" Her cries pierced Daniel's chest like knives. He reached for his phone, hands trembling, dialing emergency services. "Please," he whispered, "don't die on me." Within minutes, sirens wailed outside. Paramedics stormed in, loading Evelyn onto a stretcher. One of them turned to Daniel. "She's in critical condition. What happened?" Daniel swallowed hard. She fell." The paramedics' eyes narrowed, but said nothing. They whisked her away, leaving Daniel standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by broken glass, tears, and regret. He didn't notice the neighbor, Mama Uche, standing by her door across the hallway, clutching her chest as she whispered under her breath, "This man has killed his wife." As the ambulance sped off, Daniel's mind drifted backward, to the argument that started it all. It began over something small. It always did. He'd seen a message on Evelyn's phone that afternoon, a harmless one from her new colleague at the local hospital where she worked as a nurse. The message read, "Thanks for covering my shift today. You're a lifesaver." But jealousy had twisted Daniel's mind for months. He hadn't been himself since losing his job as a construction foreman 8 months ago. The man who used to provide for his family now relied on his wife's income. Every little thing triggered him. The way she smiled at work calls, the way she dressed, even how long she stayed at work. He'd convinced himself that Evelyn was cheating. That evening, when she returned home from work, Daniel had exploded. He accused her of sleeping with her colleague. She denied it, crying, trying to reason with him. But the anger had already taken over him, dark, burning, uncontrollable. Now, she was fighting for her life. Hours later, Daniel sat in the cold waiting area of the National Hospital, hands clasped together, eyes hollow. Maya had fallen asleep beside him on the bench, her small head resting on his lap. A doctor approached quietly. "Are you the husband?" Daniel stood immediately. Yes, I am." "How is she? Please tell me she's okay." The doctor hesitated before answering. "She's in a coma. The blow to her head caused severe trauma. We've done our best, but the next 48 hours are critical." Daniel's world shattered all over again. A coma. He slumped back into his seat, numb. "Can I see her?" he asked weakly. The doctor nodded. "Briefly. But she may not respond." Daniel entered the ward. Evelyn lay still, machines beeping beside her. Tubes connected to her body, her face pale and swollen. She looked nothing like the woman he'd married, the one who used to light up every room. He reached for her hand, tears welling in his eyes. "Evie," he whispered, "I'm sorry. Please wake up. I can't lose you like this." But she didn't move. Outside, Mama Uche stood by the doorway, shaking her head sadly. "I warned you, Daniel," she muttered. "I told you to stop raising your hand on that woman." Daniel looked up, guilt flooding him. "Please, Mama, don't tell anyone. Not yet. I'll fix this." Mama Uche sighed. "You can't fix death if it comes, my son. You better start praying." He didn't know then that while he was begging for mercy inside that hospital, fate was already setting something in motion, something he never imagined. 2 days later, a black SUV pulled up in front of the hospital gate. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out, dressed in army camouflage, his boots heavy against the pavement. His presence alone commanded attention. He looked around briefly, then walked into the reception area. The nurses froze when they saw him, his sharp jawline, his confident stride, the way his gaze seemed to pierce through walls. He approached the front desk. "Good afternoon. I'm looking for Mrs. Evelyn Mensah. She's my sister." The nurse hesitated. "She's in the ICU. May I ask who you are, sir?" The man straightened. "Sergeant Major Kelvin Mensah, Nigerian Army, just returned from deployment." The nurse gasped softly. "You're her brother?" He nodded. "Yes. I just came back from a mission in Sudan. I haven't seen her in years. What happened to her?" The nurse hesitated, eyes flicking toward the ward. "Sir, she was brought in 2 days ago." "Domestic violence case." Kelvin's eyes darkened. "By who?" "Her husband." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Kelvin clenched his jaw, his hand tightening into a fist. He turned slowly toward the corridor leading to the ICU. "Where is he?" he asked, his voice deep and cold. The nurse stammered, He's in the waiting area." Kelvin didn't wait for directions. He strode down the hallway, his boots echoing like thunder. Every step radiated fury, the kind that only comes from a soldier who's seen too much, lost too much, and just found out his only sister was beaten into a coma by the man who vowed to protect her. Daniel looked up when he heard the heavy footsteps. His eyes widened as Kelvin stopped right in front of him. "You're Daniel Mensah?" Kelvin asked. Daniel nodded nervously. Yes, I'm her husband." "Who are you?" Kelvin's stare could have cut through steel. "Her brother." Daniel's heart sank. "Oh, you must be Kelvin?" Kelvin didn't answer. He stepped closer until their faces were inches apart. "What did you do to my sister?" Daniel tried to speak, but his throat dried up. It was an accident. I didn't mean—" Before he could finish, Kelvin grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. The sound echoed through the corridor, startling everyone around. "You put your hands on my sister?" Kelvin growled, his voice trembling with rage. "You sent her to the hospital? To a coma?" "Please," Daniel gasped, struggling to breathe. "I'm sorry. It was a mistake." Kelvin's grip tightened. "A mistake? You call this a mistake?" Doctors rushed out, pleading, "Please, officer, calm down. This is a hospital." Kelvin glared into Daniel's terrified eyes for a long moment before slowly letting go. "You better pray she wakes up," he said coldly, "because if she doesn't, I'll make sure you never wake up again either." He turned and walked into the ICU to see his sister, leaving Daniel trembling. But as Kelvin stood over Evelyn's bed, tears filling his eyes, he made a silent vow. If she didn't wake up, he would destroy the man who did this. Outside, Daniel slumped onto the bench, burying his face in his hands. He had no idea that the brother he thought was dead had returned, and that his life was about to spiral into a storm he couldn't escape. Because when a soldier's heart breaks, mercy becomes a foreign word. And for Daniel, the reckoning had just begun. The hospital corridor was unusually quiet that evening. The air smelled of antiseptic and sorrow. Evelyn's bed lay surrounded by softly blinking machines, the rhythm of their beeps filling the silence like a fragile heartbeat. Her face, peaceful yet pale, looked like she was just asleep. But everyone knew it wasn't ordinary sleep. Kelvin sat beside her bed, his elbows on his knees, his eyes fixed on her motionless hand. The tough soldier the world saw was gone. What sat in that chair was a broken brother who had missed too much time, too many birthdays, too many ordinary days with his little sister. He'd been gone for 7 years, first deployed in Somalia, then Sudan, and finally on a UN peacekeeping mission in Mali. Every letter he wrote to Evelyn went unanswered. Every time he called, she never picked up. He assumed she'd moved on, maybe changed her number. But the truth, as he'd just learned, was that Daniel had isolated her completely. Kelvin's heart burned with guilt. He had promised their late mother that he would always protect Evelyn. "No matter what happens, my son," his mother had said, clutching his hand on her deathbed. "Evelyn is all you've got left in this world. Promise me you'll watch over her." And now, there she was, barely alive. He brushed a strand of hair away from her face. "Evie," he whispered softly. "It's Kelvin, your big brother. You remember how you used to follow me around the village? You'd cry if I went to the river without you. You'd say, 'Kelvin, wait for me, I'm coming.'" His voice cracked. "I'm here now, Evie. Please, wait for me again. Don't go without me this time." The machines continued to beep steadily, indifferent to his pain. A tear rolled down his cheek as he straightened up. "I won't let him get away with this," he murmured. "Not again." Daniel, meanwhile, sat in his small rented car outside the hospital, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He couldn't face Kelvin again. The soldier's eyes haunted him. That cold, burning stare had cut deeper than any words could. He started the car and drove through the dark Abuja streets, headlights flickering on wet asphalt. His mind replayed the moment he struck Evelyn, her look of shock, the way she fell, and the sickening sound of her head hitting the floor. He screamed, slamming the steering wheel. "Why did I do that? Why?" But he knew why. It wasn't just jealousy. It was pride, anger, fear. He felt small next to her success. Evelyn had become the breadwinner while he, once the proud husband, was reduced to asking her for transport fare. Each time she handed him money, a piece of his ego died. Then came that message from her colleague, the "thank you" that he twisted into betrayal. He'd let his insecurities drive him to madness, and now he might have lost her forever. As he drove home, rain began to fall, the city lights blurring through his windshield. He could hear his mother's voice echoing in his head. "Daniel, control your temper before it controls you." But it was too late. The next morning, Kelvin met with the doctor again. "How is she doing, doctor?" The doctor sighed, tired. "She's stable, but still unresponsive. Her brain activity shows some flicker, but we can't say for sure when or if she'll wake." Kelvin nodded slowly. "Can I move her to a private ward?" "She needs peace." "Of course," the doctor replied. "We'll arrange that." As the doctor left, a nurse approached Kelvin. She looked hesitant. "Sir, I don't mean to interfere, but your sister, she came here a few times before." Kelvin frowned. "Before? For what?" The nurse lowered her voice. "She came with bruises, on her arms, her back, once even her face. We suspected domestic abuse, but she always said she fell or had an accident. We wanted to report it, but she begged us not to." Kelvin's jaw tightened, his hands clenched. "She protected him," he muttered bitterly, "even while he was hurting her." The nurse nodded sadly. "Yes, she loved him deeply." Kelvin looked toward the room where Daniel had once stood crying. His expression hardened. "That love nearly killed her." He left the hospital and went straight to their apartment. He knew he needed answers, real answers. The small compound where Daniel and Evelyn lived was quiet. The landlady, Mama Uche, was sitting outside under the veranda peeling groundnuts. She froze when she saw Kelvin walking in his military uniform. Ah, you again, she said softly. You're the brother? Kelvin nodded. Yes, Ma. I need to speak with you. She gestured for him to sit. You came at the right time. I've been praying someone from her family would show up. That man is a demon in disguise. Kelvin's eyes narrowed. Tell me everything. Mama Uche sighed deeply, her voice lowering. That poor girl suffered, my son. When they moved here 4 years ago, she was cheerful, respectful, always greeting everyone. But after her husband lost his job, everything changed. He started drinking, shouting, breaking things. Sometimes at midnight, we'd hear her crying. I tried to talk to her, but she always defended him. Kelvin looked down. He isolated her, didn't he? Yes, she said. He stopped her from visiting neighbors. Even her friends stopped coming. She once told me she wanted to leave, but she was scared. She said she had nowhere else to go. Kelvin clenched his fists. And nobody helped? Mama Uche sighed again. I called the police once when I heard her screaming. They came, but she denied everything, said it was just an argument. What could we do? Kelvin stood up abruptly. Thank you, Ma. You've said enough. He turned and walked toward their flat. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale beer and regret. Broken glass littered the floor. A family photo hung crooked on the wall. Evelyn smiling brightly. Daniel beside her, Maya perched on his shoulders, a perfect picture of a lie. Kelvin picked up the photo, stared at it for a long moment, then smashed it on the floor. That same moment, Daniel walked in, holding a small grocery bag. His face went pale when he saw Kelvin. What are you doing here? Daniel asked, voice shaking. Kelvin didn't answer immediately. He turned slowly, his eyes cold as steel. I came to see where my sister nearly died. Daniel set the bag down carefully. Look, Kelvin, I know you hate me. You have every right to. But I swear I didn't mean for things to go this far. I just lost control. Kelvin stepped closer. You've been losing control for years. The neighbors told me everything. Daniel lowered his head. She wouldn't listen. She kept defending everyone but me. I felt invisible in my own house. And you think hitting her made you visible? Kelvin snapped. Daniel looked up, desperate. You don't understand. I lost everything. My job, my respect, my friends. Evelyn started shining while I sank lower. Everywhere I turned, people said, Evelyn this, Evelyn that. I felt useless. Kelvin took a deep breath, restraining himself. You were jealous of your own wife's success. Daniel's silence said it all. Kelvin shook his head. You're lucky she's still breathing. If she doesn't wake up, Daniel. His voice dropped to a low growl. You won't either. Daniel backed away, trembling. Please, don't threaten me. I already regret everything. I'm willing to face whatever comes. Kelvin turned toward the door. Oh, you will, but not just the law. You'll face me. He walked out, leaving Daniel shaking in the middle of the wrecked living room. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn remained in a coma. Kelvin rarely left her side. Maya was placed temporarily in the care of a church foster home while social workers investigated. The case had made quiet rounds among hospital staff, another victim of domestic violence. Every day, Kelvin talked to Evelyn as though she could hear him. Evie, he whispered one morning, holding her hand. Remember the mango tree behind our house? The one we used to climb, even though Mama warned us not to? You fell once and cried so hard I thought you broke your leg. But the next day, you climbed again. That's who you are. You never give up, so don't start now. He leaned closer. Come back, Evie. Your daughter needs you. And then, one afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Evelyn's fingers twitched. At first, Kelvin thought it was his imagination, but then she moved again, her hand, faintly, weakly, but definitely moving. "Doctor!" Kelvin shouted. "Doctor, she moved!" The doctors rushed in. After a brief examination, the lead doctor turned to him with a smile. "Her brain activity has increased. This is a good sign. She's trying to come back." Kelvin let out a deep, shaky breath, his heart racing. Thank God. But relief turned into anger almost immediately. He looked at her still form and whispered, "I swear, I'll make sure justice is served." Later that night, Daniel sat in his empty apartment, staring at a framed photo of Maya. His phone buzzed. It was his friend Patrick. "Guy, I hear your wife's still dey hospital," Patrick said. "How she dey?" Daniel sighed. "Still in coma." Patrick hesitated. "Police go soon come for you, oh." "I know," Daniel said quietly. "I'm not running." Patrick whistled softly. "You serious? If na me, I for Dawn disappear." Daniel closed his eyes. "Running won't change what I did. I'll face it." The line went silent for a moment. "You better pray she wakes up," Patrick said finally. "That soldier brother of hers? People say he's dangerous." Daniel's throat tightened. "I've met him." Patrick laughed nervously. "Then you know wetin I dey talk. He go kill you if she die." Daniel hung up. His mind was drowning in regret. He took a long swig from a bottle of gin and stared blankly at the ceiling. But what he didn't know was that Kelvin had already gone to the police that morning. He'd filed a report, presented evidence, and demanded that Daniel be investigated for assault and attempted murder. 2 days later, officers arrived at Daniel's door. He didn't resist when they handcuffed him. "I'll come quietly," he said, tears in his eyes. At the station, Kelvin stood watching through the glass as Daniel was booked. There was no satisfaction in his face, only cold justice. As the officers led Daniel away, Kelvin approached him. "You wanted power? You wanted control? Now you'll see what it feels like to lose both." Daniel looked up at him with broken eyes. Tell Evelyn I'm sorry." Kelvin's expression didn't soften. "You'll tell her yourself, if she ever wakes up." As Daniel was taken into the holding cell, Kelvin turned and walked out into the night air. But just as he reached the exit, his phone rang. It was the hospital. He froze as the doctor's voice came through. "Sergeant Kelvin, your sister's condition just changed drastically. You need to come immediately." Kelvin's pulse spiked. "What happened?" "She's awake," the doctor said quickly. "But she's asking for her husband." Kelvin's face hardened, his heart torn between relief and fury. Evelyn was alive, but the man who nearly killed her was still the first person on her lips. And for Kelvin, that changed everything. The hospital room smelled of disinfectant and fresh rain. Outside, thunder rolled softly, and distant lightning flickered across the gray Abuja sky. Inside, Kelvin sat slumped beside Evelyn's bed, his fatigue showing in his eyes. He had barely slept in days. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound until a soft, broken whisper pierced the air. "Vin?" Kelvin's head snapped up. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. "Evie?" Her eyelids fluttered weakly. Her lips trembled as she struggled to speak again. "Kelvin, where am I?" He leapt to his feet, gripping her hand tightly. "Evie, it's me. You're safe now. You're in the hospital." She blinked slowly, confusion clouding her eyes. "Hospital? I don't understand." Kelvin swallowed hard. "You had an accident, Evie. You've been unconscious for weeks." Her gaze drifted upward to the ceiling, then around the room, before landing back on him. "You came back? From the army?" she asked faintly. He nodded, his voice cracking. "Yes, little sis. I came back just in time." Tears rolled down his face as he brushed her hair gently. "Thank God you're awake." But her next words froze him. "Where's Daniel?" He stiffened. His smile vanished instantly. "Why are you asking about him?" She tried to move, wincing from the pain. He was here, wasn't he? He must be worried sick. Kelvin's expression darkened. Worried? Evelyn, do you even remember what he did to you? Her eyes flickered with confusion. What? What do you mean? Kelvin took a deep breath, forcing his anger down. You were beaten, Evie, by your husband. You almost died. Her breathing quickened. No, Daniel would never. He loves me. Kelvin's jaw clenched. Love? Is that what you call this? He gestured at the scars on her face, the bruises along her arms. He's sitting in a jail cell right now for what he did. Evelyn shook her head weakly, tears filling her eyes. No, you're wrong. It was my fault. I made him angry. Kelvin leaned forward, eyes blazing. Stop protecting him, Evie. He almost killed you. Her lips quivered. Please, don't say that. I provoked him. He just lost control. Kelvin turned away, furious. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. She was still defending her abuser, still trapped in the web of guilt Daniel had spun around her for years. He forced himself to calm down. Evie, he said quietly, do you remember what happened that night? She frowned, struggling to recall. We were arguing about something small. Then he shouted. I fell. I can't remember everything clearly. It's blurry. Her voice cracked. I just remember Maya screaming. Kelvin exhaled deeply. That's enough. Don't push yourself. Rest now. But as he stood to leave, Evelyn reached weakly for his hand. Kelvin, promise me something. What is it? Don't hurt him, she whispered. Please. Promise me you won't hurt Daniel. Kelvin froze. He wanted to shout, to ask her how she could still care for the man who destroyed her, but seeing the desperation in her eyes stopped him. Fine, he muttered bitterly. I promise. He stepped out of the room, his face stone hard. The nurse at the counter glanced up as he passed. She's awake, sir. That's wonderful news. Kelvin's tone was cold. It's only wonderful if she remembers who her real enemy is. Meanwhile, inside a dim cell at the police station, Daniel sat hunched on a thin mattress. His beard was unkempt, his eyes hollow. He hadn't eaten properly in days. Guilt gnawed at him more than hunger ever could. The metallic clang of the door startled him. An officer entered. You have a visitor. Daniel looked up, confused. Who? The officer smirked. Your wife's brother. Before Daniel could respond, Kelvin walked in, towering and cold, wearing plain clothes now but carrying an air of authority that filled the room. The officer stepped out and locked the door behind him. Kelvin stared at him for a long moment. She's awake. Daniel's eyes widened. Evelyn? She's awake? Kelvin nodded. Yes, you're lucky. Because if she hadn't woken up, you wouldn't be breathing right now. Daniel lowered his head. Thank God she's alive. I didn't mean to hurt her. Kelvin took a step closer. Save your pity. She asked me not to hurt you. Daniel looked up confused. She said that? Kelvin nodded slowly, voice dripping with disbelief. Even after what you did, she's still protecting you. I don't understand what kind of spell you cast on her. Daniel shook his head. It's not a spell. She's a good woman, better than I deserve. Kelvin's tone grew harsh. You're right about that. Daniel sighed, trembling. You don't know what it's like, Kelvin. I wasn't always like this. I loved her. I still do. But when I lost everything, I lost myself. I took it out on the only person who stayed. Kelvin's stare softened slightly, but only for a second. Then why didn't you let her go instead of breaking her? Daniel buried his face in his hands. Because I was scared. She was slipping away. I could see it. The distance, the quiet. She was planning something. Kelvin frowned. What do you mean? Daniel hesitated. She was hiding something from me. Kelvin's eyes narrowed. Like what? Daniel lifted his head slowly. I don't know. But a week before it happened, I saw her packing a bag. She said she was sorting clothes for charity, but I found her passport inside. She was planning to leave me. Kelvin's stomach tightened. Leave you? Where? I don't know, Daniel said quietly, but she was going somewhere far. Kelvin's heart pounded. This was new. Evelyn hadn't mentioned any of that. He leaned closer. Did you confront her? Daniel nodded weakly. Yes. That's how the argument started. Kelvin stepped back, his mind racing. He turned toward the door without another word. Kelvin, Daniel called out softly. Please, tell her I'm sorry. Kelvin didn't respond. He banged on the metal door. I'm done here. As the guard opened it, Daniel whispered, Tell her I'd rather die than see her hurt again. Kelvin paused for a brief moment, but walked out without looking back. Back at the hospital, Evelyn's recovery was slow but steady. She could now sit up and eat on her own. Maya had been brought in to see her under supervision. The little girl ran into her mother's arms, sobbing. Mommy, I missed you. Don't leave me again. Evelyn kissed her hair, tears streaming down her face. Never again, my baby. Mommy's here. Kelvin watched from the doorway, a bittersweet smile tugging at his lips. But as he turned to leave, the doctor called out to him. Sergeant Kelvin, may I speak with you privately? They stepped into the hallway. The doctor's tone was careful. Your sister's recovery is remarkable, but there's something else you should know. Kelvin frowned. What is it? When she was admitted, we did a full scan and blood work. There were old fractures, healed but visible, and traces of sedatives in her system. Kelvin stiffened. Sedatives? Yes, strong ones. It's possible she'd been drugged over time. The dosage was small, consistent, likely administered without her knowledge. Kelvin's eyes widened in shock. You mean he was drugging her? The doctor nodded gravely. We can't be sure, but that's the pattern we found. Kelvin clenched his fists. That bastard. He stormed back into the room. Evelyn looked up, startled. Kelvin, what's wrong? He tried to steady his voice. Evie, the doctors found something in your blood. They said you were being drugged. Do you remember anything about that? Her eyes widened. No. Wait. She paused, thinking hard. Sometimes I'd feel dizzy for no reason, or I'd fall asleep in the middle of conversations. Daniel said it was stress from work. Kelvin's rage simmered beneath the surface. He was controlling you, Evie, making sure you stayed too weak to fight back. Evelyn shook her head, horrified. No, he wouldn't. Yes, he would, Kelvin snapped. Wake up, Evelyn. This man didn't just hurt you, he tried to own you. Her tears spilled freely. Why would he do that? Because he's sick, Kelvin spat, and I'll make sure he never touches you again. But Evelyn grabbed his hand. Please, Kelvin, let the law handle it. Promise me you won't take matters into your own hands. He met her pleading eyes. His chest rose and fell with restrained fury. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. Fine. But if the law fails, I won't. He turned and left the room, his face grim. But just as he stepped into the corridor, a nurse ran toward him, holding a phone. Sir, you need to hear this. It's urgent. Kelvin took the phone. The voice on the other end made his blood run cold. This is Officer Hassan. Daniel Mensah just escaped custody. Kelvin froze. What did you say? 2 guards were injured. We believe someone helped him. He's gone. Kelvin's eyes narrowed, his pulse racing. Find him before I do, he growled, and slammed the phone down. Inside the room, Evelyn stared at the door, a strange chill running through her body. For the first time since waking up, she felt afraid, truly afraid. Because deep down, she knew Daniel wouldn't just disappear. He'd come back. And when he did, Nothing would ever be the same again. Night had fallen over Abuja. The hospital's long corridors glowed dimly beneath fluorescent lights that hummed like tired insects. Rain tapped softly against the windows, each drop echoing in the silence of Evelyn's room. She sat upright now, wrapped in a thin, white blanket, her face pale but alert. Her reflection in the window frightened her. The bruises had faded to yellowish shadows, yet the woman staring back was not the same Evelyn who once danced in her kitchen, laughing while stirring stew. This Evelyn looked older, haunted, stripped of trust. The door creaked open and Kelvin stepped in, still wearing the same clothes he'd worn all day. His eyes were hard, his jaw looked set in stone. "You didn't sleep again," Evelyn said softly. He forced a smile. "Can't sleep when the man who hurt you is out there." Her chest tightened. "They still haven't found him?" Kelvin shook his head. "No, the police searched the main checkpoints and motor parks. He's vanished." Evelyn stared at her trembling hands. "He won't run forever." Kelvin crossed the room and sat beside her. "That's what I'm counting on." For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then Evelyn whispered, "Kelvin, I keep remembering things, small flashes. They come and go like dreams." He leaned forward quickly. "What kind of flashes?" She closed her eyes, voice shaky. "I see Daniel. At night, mixing something in my tea. I thought it was sugar. I remember feeling dizzy afterwards. Then, darkness." Kelvin's stomach turned. "It's true then. He was drugging you." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I was so stupid. I trusted him." He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You weren't stupid. You were loyal. And loyalty is a dangerous gift in the wrong hands." Evelyn looked up at him, eyes glistening. "I need to tell you something else. Something I didn't tell the police." Kelvin nodded. "Go on." "I really was planning to leave him," she confessed. "But not because I stopped loving him. Because I was scared he'd kill me. I'd already bought a ticket to Ghana. I wanted to start over with Maya, but then he found out." Kelvin's jaw tightened. "So he knew?" "Yes. The night he attacked me, I told him I couldn't live like that anymore. I said I was leaving. He lost it." Her voice cracked, trembling. "He said, 'If I can't have you, no one will.' Then he hit me." Kelvin rose slowly, pacing the room. His chest burned with fury. "And now he's free. This ends tonight." Evelyn reached out, clutching his sleeve. "No, please, don't do anything reckless. Promise me you'll let the police handle it." He paused at the doorway. "If the police were handling it, he'd already be behind bars." She stared at him, terrified. "Kelvin, please!" He didn't answer. He stepped into the hall and shut the door behind him. Across town, Daniel crouched in the shadows behind an abandoned bus terminal. The rain soaked his clothes, dripping from his hair into his eyes. He hadn't eaten in a day. The smell of diesel and rot hung in the air. He watched taxis come and go, clutching a small duffel bag that held his remaining cash and a single photograph, Evelyn and Maya smiling at a beach years ago. His hands trembled as he ran his thumb over their faces. "How did it come to this?" he muttered to himself. He remembered the night of the escape clearly. One of the junior officers, an old acquaintance from his construction days, had turned a blind eye for cash. Now Daniel was a wanted man, branded a monster. But in his heart, he still believed he could make things right. "If I can just see her," he whispered. "If she could just hear me, maybe she'll forgive me." A figure approached through the rain, tall, wearing a hooded jacket. Daniel tensed until he recognized the voice. "Daniel." It was Patrick, his friend. "Man, you look like hell," Patrick said, handing him a small loaf of bread and bottled water. "You should have never escaped. The whole city's talking." Daniel tore into the bread hungrily. "I didn't plan to run. I just panicked." Patrick shook his head. "You need to disappear. Head to Benin, then cross to Togo. I know someone who can help." Daniel stopped eating. I can't leave. Not yet. Patrick stared at him. Are you mad? The police and that military brother are hunting you. If he finds you first, I need to see her. Daniel cut in, his voice trembling. I need to know she's okay. Patrick scoffed. You think she wants to see you after what you did? Daniel's eyes burned. You don't understand. I love her. Patrick sighed. Love doesn't look like broken bones, my friend. Daniel's face crumpled. I know what I did. I can't sleep. I see her face every time I close my eyes. He looked up desperately. If I could just explain. Tell her I was sick, lost, jealous. Maybe she'll forgive me. Then I can turn myself in. Patrick hesitated, glancing around nervously. Fine. But after that, you run. Understand? Daniel nodded. Just one last time. Back at the hospital, Evelyn had finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, but her dreams were filled with flashes of shouting, shattering glass, Daniel's rage, and something else. A woman's voice, soft but clear. Don't let him find out. She bolted upright, gasping for air. Sweat soaked her hospital gown. Don't let who find out? She whispered. She pressed her hands to her temples. The memory was blurry, but that voice, she knew it. Her friend, Clara, who used to visit her secretly before Daniel banned all visitors. Clara had once warned her, Evelyn, your husband's losing it. If you ever need a safe place, call me. Evelyn suddenly felt sure. Clara might know more than anyone. She reached for her phone on the bedside table. It wasn't there. The nurse must have kept it for safety. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, ignoring the pain in her ribs. If she could just get to a phone, she could call Clara. She had to. Kelvin's car roared through the rain-soaked streets. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His contact at the station had texted him, Lead, suspect spotted near Nyanya bus terminal. Kelvin's instincts flared. He took a sharp turn, tires screeching, heart pounding like a war drum. By the time he reached the terminal, it was nearly deserted. Only the dim glow of a flickering bulb lit the place. He scanned the shadows, his military training kicking in. Footprints in the mud, faint cigarette smell, and a crumpled food wrapper. He moved quietly between rusted buses, hand resting on the small pistol holstered beneath his jacket. Then he heard it. A whisper, faint but unmistakable. Daniel Mensah. He turned sharply. Patrick stood at the far end of the terminal, startled by Kelvin's sudden presence. Who are you? Kelvin demanded. Patrick raised his hands quickly. I'm just a friend. Please, don't shoot. Kelvin stepped closer, voice cold. Where is he? Patrick swallowed hard. He left. Just a few minutes ago, I swear. He said he wanted to see Evelyn. Kelvin's heart froze. He's going to the hospital. Without another word, he sprinted back to his car. At that same moment, a hooded figure slipped through the back entrance of the hospital, moving quickly past the nurses' station. The rain had stopped, leaving only the faint hum of generators and the distant cry of thunder. Daniel's clothes were soaked, his shoes silent on the polished floor. He avoided the security guard by timing his steps with a passing stretcher. His mind screamed, turn back, but his heart dragged him forward. When he reached her ward, he paused outside the door, trembling. He could hear her breathing inside, steady but fragile. He pushed the door open quietly. Evelyn stirred. Who's there? Daniel froze, then stepped into the faint light. It's me. Her eyes widened. For a second, she thought she was dreaming. Daniel? He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. Evie, thank God you're alive. She sat up slowly, clutching her blanket. How did you get out? He stepped closer. I just needed to see you. Please don't scream. Her voice trembled. You shouldn't be here. I know, he whispered. But I can't live with myself. I came to say I'm sorry. She looked away, tears filling her eyes. Sorry doesn't heal what you broke. Daniel fell to his knees. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I love you." Her lips trembled. "If that's love, then I don't want it." He looked shattered. "I was sick, Evie. Jealous. I thought everyone wanted to take you away from me." She shook her head slowly. "You took everything from yourself." Silence fell. Thick, painful silence. Then footsteps thundered in the hallway. The door burst open. Kelvin stormed in, gun raised. "Step away from her!" Daniel spun around, hands in the air. "Please, don't shoot. I came to surrender." Kelvin's eyes burned with fury. "You came to finish what you started." Evelyn cried out. "Kelvin, no! Don't shoot him!" But Kelvin's finger trembled on the trigger, his rage barely contained. "He doesn't deserve mercy," Evelyn's voice cracked. "If you kill him, you'll destroy everything I've fought to rebuild." For a long, unbearable moment, Kelvin's hand stayed raised. Then slowly, with visible effort, he lowered the gun. Daniel collapsed to his knees, sobbing. "Thank you." Kelvin's voice shook with hatred. "Don't thank me. Thank her." The police arrived seconds later, cuffing Daniel as he whispered, "Evie, tell Maya I'm sorry." They dragged him away. The echo of the door slamming shut lingered long after. Kelvin stood by the window, breathing heavily, the storm inside him still raging. Evelyn reached for his hand. "You did the right thing." He didn't answer. His eyes were distant, haunted. Justice feels empty when you still want revenge. Outside, lightning flashed again, briefly illuminating Daniel's face as he was shoved into a police van. For the first time, he looked truly broken. Inside the hospital room, Evelyn whispered to herself, "Maybe this time, peace will find us." But peace was still far away. Because neither of them knew that Daniel's escape had been arranged, and someone else had paid for it. Someone who wasn't done with the Mensah family yet. The morning after Daniel's rearrest should have been calm. It wasn't. Rain had washed the city clean, but tension hung in the air like humidity before a storm. The news of Daniel's hospital intrusion had spread fast. Jealous husband returns to scene of attack, arrested again. Reporters lingered near the hospital gate, shoving microphones at anyone in uniform. Inside, Kelvin stood by the window of Evelyn's ward, hands in his pockets, eyes cold and thoughtful. He hadn't slept. The scent of hospital disinfectant had become part of his blood now. Evelyn, still pale but stronger, watched him quietly. "You didn't go home again," she said softly. He didn't look at her. "Home feels like a place that doesn't exist anymore. You can't keep living in this," she said. "You stopped smiling." He turned finally, forcing a faint grin. "Smiling won't catch the people who helped him escape." Her brow furrowed. "People? You think he didn't act alone?" Kelvin nodded slowly. "Prison breaks don't happen without help. I've seen enough of them." Evelyn frowned. "But who would risk that for him?" "That's what I'm going to find out," Kelvin said, his tone flat. "And when I do, they'll wish they never crossed my path." Across town, Daniel sat in the back of a prison van, shackled, bruised, and silent. The police convoy rumbled toward the Central Correctional Facility. Rain hammered the roof. He stared at the floor, his mind spinning. His plan, or what little of it existed, had fallen apart. He'd only wanted to apologize, not hurt anyone again. But as the van slowed at a checkpoint, he noticed something strange. The officers in front exchanged uneasy glances. One of them received a radio call, then suddenly barked, "Pull over!" Daniel frowned. "What's happening?" No one answered. The officer stepped out, arguing with a man in a black raincoat standing by the road. Through the misted window, Daniel couldn't make out their faces, but he saw money, thick bundles, passed in a small waterproof bag. Then, without warning, the side door slid open. A voice hissed, "Move if you want to live." Before Daniel could react, strong hands grabbed him and yanked him out into the rain. Shots rang out. One of the escort officers fell. Another shouted. Daniel stumbled to his feet, heart pounding, wrists still bound. The man in the raincoat shoved him toward a black SUV parked nearby. "Get in." "Who are you?" Daniel gasped. "Someone who thinks you still have value alive," the man snapped. Daniel hesitated, but the sound of approaching sirens pushed him into the vehicle. The door slammed shut, and the SUV sped off, tires screeching on wet asphalt. Back at the hospital, Evelyn's doctor entered the room carrying a clipboard. "Mrs. Mensah, your tests are improving. If progress continues, we might discharge you within 2 weeks." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Thank you, doctor." As he left, she turned to Maya, who was drawing at the small table by the bed. The little girl looked up. "Mommy, are we going home soon?" Evelyn's smile faded slightly. "Yes, baby, soon, but maybe to a different home." Maya frowned. "Why?" Evelyn hesitated. "Because sometimes home stops feeling safe." The door opened. Kelvin stepped in, holding his phone tight. His face was grim. "What happened?" Evelyn asked. He didn't answer at first. He played a short voice note instead. A shaky voice came through. "Officer Hassan, the man in charge of Daniel's transfer." "Sergeant Kelvin, we were ambushed on the expressway. Unknown men intercepted the van. 1 officer down. The suspect's gone. Whoever did this knew our route and timing." Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. "He escaped again?" Kelvin nodded, eyes dark. "Not alone this time. This was professional. Someone planned it." Maya's eyes widened. "Mommy, is he coming here again?" Evelyn hugged her tightly. "No, sweetheart, he won't." But she didn't sound sure. The SUV sped down a dirt road outside the city, tires splashing mud. Inside, Daniel sat in stunned silence as the man beside him removed his hood. He was middle-aged, clean-shaven, wearing an expensive wristwatch. Daniel blinked. "I know you?" The man smirked. "You should. I'm Mr. Adewale, your old boss at Centec Construction." Daniel's mind reeled. "You fired me." "I let you go," Adewale corrected smoothly. "There's a difference. You were unstable, but that instability? Useful now." Daniel's throat tightened. "Why help me escape?" Adewale leaned back. "Because you owe me, and because you can do something I can't." Daniel frowned. "What do you want?" Adewale's smile was thin. "That woman, Evelyn, she humiliated me years ago. She testified against my company when we were accused of embezzlement. You remember?" Daniel searched his memory. Yes. Evelyn had been a nurse at the construction site's medical unit. She had reported Adewale for mismanaging staff health funds. That report cost him millions. "She ruined my business," Adewale said coldly. "My reputation. Everything. But when I heard what you did to her, I realized you hated her too. And I thought, maybe we can help each other." Daniel stared at him, horrified. "You want revenge?" Adewale nodded. "And you want redemption. Help me make her pay, and I'll make you disappear safely. New ID, new life." Daniel's stomach churned. "You're insane. I won't hurt her again." Adewale's eyes narrowed. "You already did. Don't act righteous now." "I said no." Adewale's smile vanished. "Then maybe you'll say yes after seeing something." He pulled out a small tablet and played a video. It showed Maya, leaving the hospital with a nurse, laughing innocently. Daniel's heart stopped. "What is that?" Adewale's tone was casual. "Insurance, in case you change your mind." Daniel lunged, but 2 men in the front seats turned, pointing guns at him. "Sit down, Mr. Mensah," Adewale said softly. "You don't make the rules anymore." At the same time, Kelvin's car screeched to a halt outside the Nyanya Express checkpoint, where the ambush had taken place. Police tape flapped in the wind. Officers moved around, collecting shell casings. He showed his ID and pushed through the crowd. Officer Hassan approached, bandaged arms slung in a makeshift sling. Kelvin's voice was sharp. "Tell me everything." Hassan sighed. "We were taking him to the correctional center. At the bridge, 2 SUVs blocked the road. They fired warning shots, overpowered us. One of my men's dead." "Did you see their faces?" "Only one. Looked like someone important. Confident, clean, not a thug." Kelvin nodded slowly. "Then this isn't random. This is payback." He turned toward his car, pulling out his phone. "Track Adewale Sentek," he muttered to himself. "That name keeps popping up." He remembered Evelyn once mentioning an old boss who made her life miserable before she met Daniel. The puzzle pieces began to align. He called the hospital immediately. "Evelyn, listen carefully. Did you ever report someone named Adewale while you worked at the site clinic?" Evelyn's breath caught. "Yes. He was stealing workers' medical funds. How do you know that name?" Kelvin's voice hardened. "Because I think he's the one who helped Daniel escape." Evelyn froze. "Oh my God." Kelvin's tone turned urgent. "Evelyn, don't leave your room. Lock the door. I'm sending officers there now." He hung up and started the engine, his mind racing. In the dark warehouse where Adewale's men had taken Daniel, tension thickened like smoke. Daniel sat handcuffed to a chair, his eyes on the door. Adewale paced slowly, voice calm. "You'll help me, Daniel. Not because you want to, but because you don't want that little girl to suffer." Daniel's teeth clenched. "If you touch my daughter—" Adewale chuckled. "Relax. I'm not a monster. I just want Evelyn to feel what I felt. Helplessness." He stopped pacing, his voice dropping low. "You'll lure her out of that hospital. She'll come running when she thinks you're hurt. Then I'll handle the rest." Daniel shook his head violently. "No, I won't do it." Adewale leaned closer, his tone venomous. "You will. Or Maya disappears forever." Daniel's breath came in ragged bursts. "Please, she's innocent." "Then do what I say." Daniel's mind raced. He had to find a way out, to protect Evelyn, to save Maya. He scanned the room. 2 guards, 1 door, 1 open window above the crates. He could work with that. Adewale handed him a phone. "Call her. Tell her you're dying. Cry if you must. You were good at that, weren't you?" Daniel's hands shook as he dialed Evelyn's number. The phone rang in Evelyn's room. She hesitated, seeing Daniel's name flash on the screen. "Kelvin said not to," she whispered, but her heart wouldn't let her ignore it. She answered, voice trembling. "Daniel?" His voice was weak, pained. "Evie, they're going to kill me. Please, help me." Her heart stopped. "Where are you?" He coughed. "I don't know. Some warehouse. Please, don't tell Kelvin. He'll kill me." Evelyn's voice broke. "Daniel, what have you done?" The line went dead. Maya, sensing her mother's fear, looked up. "Mommy?" Evelyn forced a smile. "It's okay, baby. Mommy just needs to make a call." She quickly called Kelvin. No answer. Then another officer. Still nothing. She bit her lip hard, trembling. Her instincts screamed it was a trap, but her heart, foolish and forgiving, whispered, "What if he's telling the truth?" She began dressing slowly, her body still weak but her mind made up. Kelvin's phone buzzed just as he reached the outskirts of the industrial area. He answered immediately. "Evie?" But it was the nurse. Her voice was panicked. "Sergeant, your sister, she left the hospital." Kelvin's heart dropped. "What?" "She said she was going for air, but the guard saw her getting into a taxi." Kelvin slammed the steering wheel. "No, no, no, no!" He floored the accelerator. At the warehouse, Daniel had already begun his plan. While pretending to cry during the call, he'd loosened one of his handcuffs using a piece of wire from the chair. The moment Adewale turned to answer a phone call, Daniel struck, elbowing one guard, kicking another in the chest. The gun fired once, grazing his arm, but he didn't stop. He threw himself toward the crates, smashing through a stack, and crawled toward the open window. Adewale shouted, "Stop him!" But Daniel was already outside, bleeding, running into the rain. His only thought, find Evelyn before they do. Minutes later, a taxi stopped near the same road. Evelyn stepped out, scanning the area nervously. "Daniel?" she called softly. The wind howled through the empty field. From the shadows, Daniel staggered forward, clutching his bleeding arm. "Evie!" she gasped. "Oh my God, you're hurt!" "Run!" he panted. "They're coming for you." Before she could respond, headlights flared in the darkness. Adewale's SUV roared toward them. Evelyn screamed. Daniel grabbed her hand. "Go!" Gunshots split the air. Evelyn ducked, dragging Daniel toward an unfinished building nearby. Inside, they hid behind a concrete wall, breathing hard. "Why did you come?" he whispered. "Because you called me," she snapped, trembling. "You said you were dying." He looked at her, eyes full of pain. "I was, but not from bullets, from guilt." She stared at him, torn between rage and sorrow. "Daniel, what have you done?" Before he could answer, a voice echoed through the rain. "Daniel, bring her out or the girl dies." Evelyn froze. "Maya?" Daniel's eyes widened. He wasn't bluffing. Outside, Adewale stood under the rain, holding a phone that displayed a live video. Maya tied to a chair somewhere dimly lit. Evelyn screamed, tears flooding her eyes. "No, leave her alone." Adewale's voice was cold. "Then come out quietly." Daniel turned to her, whispering, "Trust me this once." She shook her head, sobbing. "I can't." He touched her cheek gently. "You have to. For Maya." He stood slowly, hands raised, stepping into the rain. "Let her go, Adewale. I'll come with you." Adewale smirked. "You think you control this?" A gunshot cracked, but it wasn't his. Kelvin's voice thundered from behind. "Step away from them!" Police lights flared. Sirens wailed. Chaos erupted. Bullets flew as Adewale's men scattered. Kelvin tackled one, disarmed another. Daniel shielded Evelyn behind a wall, bleeding badly now. Finally, Adewale grabbed his gun, aiming at Evelyn. But Daniel threw himself in front of her. The bullet tore through his shoulder. He fell to the ground with a cry. Kelvin fired once. Adewale dropped, the gun spinning from his hand. Silence. Rain poured harder, washing blood into the earth. Kelvin rushed to Evelyn's side. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, sobbing. "Maya! Where's Maya?" Officers arrived seconds later, shouting, "We found the girl! She's safe!" Evelyn collapsed into her brother's arms, trembling. Daniel lay a few feet away, clutching his wound, tears mixing with rain. "Tell Maya, I'm sorry." Then his eyes rolled back as paramedics rushed in. Hours later, at dawn, the storm had finally passed. The sky glowed faint orange. Evelyn sat by Daniel's stretcher as they loaded him into an ambulance. Kelvin stood beside her, silent. "He saved me," she whispered. Kelvin nodded slowly. Maybe this was his way of making peace. The ambulance doors closed, its siren fading into the distance. For the first time in weeks, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt before. Closure. Fragile, but real. But as she turned to Kelvin, he was staring at his phone, eyes wide. "What is it?" she asked. He showed her the message that had just arrived, an anonymous text. "You caught the wrong man. Adewale was only the beginning." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" Kelvin looked toward the rising sun, his jaw tightening. "It means this isn't over." The morning after Adewale's death, Abuja woke restless. By 7 a.m., the story was everywhere. Businessman killed in police crossfire, jealous husband, case deepens. Reporters crowded the hospital gates again, but inside Evelyn's ward, calm seemed to return for the first time in months. Kelvin sat beside her bed, scrolling through his phone, trying to make sense of the anonymous text. Adewale was only the beginning. He had traced the number. It was unregistered, bounced through a dozen servers. impossible to pin down. Still, his gut said the sender was close. Evelyn poured water shakily into a plastic cup. "Maybe it's a prank, Kelvin. Someone trying to scare you." Kelvin's gaze stayed fixed on the message. "No. Whoever sent this knows details that were never public. They knew Adewale's name. They knew the case wasn't closed." Before she could reply, his phone buzzed again. Same hidden ID. Text. "You moved too fast last night. People are unhappy. Check your car." Kelvin shot to his feet. "Stay here. Don't move." He strode out into the parking lot. The morning air smelled of damp dust and exhaust fumes. His SUV glistened from the rain. At first glance, it looked fine, until he crouched near the rear tire. A small black device clung magnetically to the metal frame, blinking red. Kelvin's heart stopped. "Bomb," he whispered. He bolted back toward the building, shouting, "Everyone out! Evacuate now!" Nurses and patients froze, then chaos erupted. Alarms wailed. People screamed. Evelyn clutched Maya as orderlies rushed them down the corridor. Kelvin turned back once more, scanning for any suspicious figure, and saw a man in a blue maintenance jacket watching from the far exit. Their eyes met. The man smirked, dropped a phone, and disappeared into the stairwell. Seconds later, the car exploded. The blast shattered windows, flung debris across the courtyard, and shook the hospital to its foundations. Smoke and screams filled the air. Kelvin was thrown to the ground, ears ringing. Dust rained from the ceiling. He coughed, forcing himself up. His first thought, Evelyn and Maya. He staggered inside, ignoring officers yelling for him to wait. The corridors were a mess of panic and shattered glass, but then he saw them. Evelyn clutching Maya, both unharmed but terrified. He knelt beside them. "You're okay. You're safe," Maya sobbed. "Uncle Kelvin, are the bad men coming?" He hugged her tightly. "Not while I'm here." By afternoon, police tape surrounded the wreckage. Journalists swarmed. Investigators combed through the debris while drones hovered overhead. Detective Hassan approached Kelvin, face grim. "You weren't supposed to survive that, Sergeant. Whoever planted that device knew exactly where your car was parked." Kelvin wiped soot from his forehead. "The bomber was here, dressed like maintenance. I saw him before it blew." "Any description?" "Tall, scar above his left eye. Didn't flinch when the car went off." Hassan nodded. "We'll pull CCTV from the hospital lot." Kelvin's voice hardened. "Don't bother filtering footage through the usual system. They've already hacked it. Whoever this is, they're inside the network." "Inside?" Hassan frowned. "You mean someone from the hospital?" Kelvin met his eyes. "Or the police." That night, Evelyn sat awake, watching Maya sleep. The explosion replayed in her mind, the heat, the roar, the smell of burning rubber. She'd thought the worst was over, but now it was clear. Someone wanted them all dead. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A video message. Her blood ran cold as she pressed play. The screen showed Daniel, bandaged, pale, lying on a hospital bed in a different location, terrified. A man's voice behind the camera said, "Say hello to your wife." Daniel's cracked voice pleaded, "Evie, don't trust anyone. They're not finished." Then static. The video ended. Evelyn's hands trembled. No, he can't. He was under police guard. She dialed Kelvin immediately. "It's Daniel. He's alive. Someone has him," Kelvin answered, already breathing hard. "I know. Hassan just called me. Daniel vanished from his ward 20 minutes ago. 2 fake officers signed him out." Evelyn's voice broke. "They'll kill him." Kelvin's tone dropped to steel. "Not if I find them first." An hour later, Kelvin met Hassan at the Central Surveillance Unit. The room glowed with screens showing traffic feeds and security cams across Abuja. Hassan pointed at one feed. "Here, ambulance number 547A, registered to the City Health Department. But look at the driver." Kelvin leaned closer. The driver's face flickered under the light, scar above the left eye. Kelvin slammed his fist on the table. That's him, the one from the hospital. The footage showed the ambulance turning off the expressway toward the outskirts, industrial district again. Hassan frowned. That area's half abandoned. Perfect hideout. Kelvin grabbed his gear. We move now. In a decaying warehouse lit by flickering bulbs, Daniel sat tied to a chair again, wounds reopened. The same scarred man circled him with a pistol. You're harder to kill than expected, the man sneered. Your wife's brother ruined $1 million operation last night. Daniel's voice was weak. Who are you people? The man smiled thinly. You really don't know who funded Adewale? He wasn't the boss, just the accountant. Then who? A door creaked open. Footsteps echoed. A woman stepped into the light, tall, elegant, in a black coat. Her heels clicked on the concrete. Daniel's mouth fell open. Clara? Evelyn's old friend smiled coolly. Hello, Daniel. Back at Police HQ, Kelvin's car sped through the gates. Track the ambulance. Last ping? Hassan pointed to the map. Old textile factory off Airport Road. Signal went dead there. Kelvin loaded his weapon. Then that's where we finish this. Inside the factory, Clara walked slowly around Daniel, her voice smooth as silk. Surprised? Daniel could barely speak. Evelyn trusted you. She was foolish to, Clara said. Do you think Adewale planned all that by himself? I financed everything, every transfer, every bribe, because Evelyn destroyed my life before she even knew it. Daniel blinked through pain. Destroyed? How? Clara's jaw tightened. 5 years ago, she reported your company's corruption. That report shut down Centec's medical contracts, my contracts. I lost everything. My father died from the stress, so yes, I wanted her to suffer. And you, she smirked, you were my perfect weapon. Daniel stared in horror. You used me. I guided you, she corrected. Fed your jealousy, your fear, the text messages, the doubts. You thought they came from her coworkers? They came from me. I made sure you saw what would break you. He shook his head violently. No. Yes, she whispered. And now you'll die knowing you were never in control. She raised the gun. A shout echoed through the building. Police! Drop your weapon! Clara turned sharply. Kelvin and Hassan stormed in with flashlights and rifles. Officers spread out, surrounding the factory floor. Hands up! Hassan barked. Clara smiled slowly. You're too late. She pressed a button on a small remote. Metallic clicking filled the air. Dozens of red lights blinked on the walls. Kelvin recognized them instantly. Bombs! Everyone out! He dove forward, tackling Clara to the ground as bullets flew. Hassan dragged Daniel toward cover. One explosive detonated early, sending concrete raining from the ceiling. Kelvin wrestled the remote from Clara's hand, but she slashed at him with a hidden knife, cutting his arm. He gritted his teeth, slammed her hand against the floor until the blade fell. You think you've won? She hissed. There are others. He cuffed her wrists. Not if you don't live to tell them. The last charge detonated near the far wall, collapsing half the roof. Dust and smoke filled the air. Officers scrambled, pulling Daniel and Kelvin out moments before the structure gave way. Outside, under flashing police lights, Kelvin watched as Clara was shoved into a van, still smiling. You'll never stop it, she whispered. He's already here. Who? Kelvin demanded. She only laughed, a chilling, hollow sound as the doors slammed. By sunrise, the city looked peaceful again, but the damage was deep. Daniel survived surgery but remained under heavy guard. Evelyn visited him, her face unreadable. You could have died saving me, she said quietly. He looked at her through weary eyes. Maybe that was the point. She nodded slowly. I forgive you, Daniel, but I'll never forget. Tears slipped down his cheeks. That's more than I deserve. Outside, Kelvin waited beside his car, arm bandaged. He scrolled through his phone. A final message had arrived from an unknown number. She was only one piece. The real war starts now. He stared at it, jaw tightening. War, he muttered. Then I'll be ready. The camera of this story would linger on his face, scarred, determined, as dawn light painted the skyline gold, promising both hope and danger. Because for the Mensah family, peace had never lasted long. The night sky over Abuja was still. Too still. No traffic noise. No generator hum. Only the chirp of crickets and the whisper of wind against the hospital's glass windows. Inside, Evelyn sat by the window, her reflection caught between moonlight and shadow. She held Maya's hand as the little girl slept peacefully on the couch beside her. For the first time in months, Evelyn felt a strange calm, but something deep in her chest said it wasn't over. Kelvin stood by the door, dressed again in his tactical jacket. His face was hard, his eyes restless. They transferred Clara to the high-security unit today, he said flatly. She's refusing to talk. Evelyn turned to him. You think she was telling the truth? About someone else being behind it all? Kelvin's jaw flexed. She's a manipulator, but something about that laugh. It wasn't bluff. Evelyn's gaze dropped. I just want it all to end, Kelvin. He nodded slowly. It will. Tonight. At the same time, deep in a private mansion on the edge of Maitama, a man in a crisp suit poured himself a glass of whiskey. The room glowed softly under warm, golden lights. Dozens of monitors flickered on the wall, showing footage from hidden cameras around Abuja, the hospital, police HQ, even Kelvin's house. The man smirked, swirling his drink. Poor Clara, he said into the darkness. She served her purpose. He pressed a button. The screen switched to live news. Breaking, Clara Adedeji, prime suspect in terror cell connections, under custody. He chuckled. Blame is such a flexible currency. A soft voice came from behind him. You always plan too far ahead, Colonel. He turned slightly. A shadowed figure leaned against the doorway, one of his guards. The man's smile widened. You have to, in this line of work. If the Mensah siblings think this is over, they're wrong. Back at the hospital, Kelvin's phone buzzed. An unknown number again. He frowned and answered. A calm male voice said, Sergeant Kelvin Mensah, you've been quite a problem. Kelvin's tone hardened. Who is this? I'm the man who made your sister's life a lesson in obedience. You took away one of my best operatives last night. I don't like losing investments. Kelvin's grip tightened on the phone. What do you want? The voice chuckled. You'll see. Check your inbox. The line cut. Seconds later, his phone dinged with a new message. A live video feed. Evelyn's ward camera. The timestamp, 5 minutes ago. In the video, a man in a nurse's uniform slipped something under Evelyn's bedside cabinet, a small black case. Kelvin's heart stopped. Evie! He burst into the ward, eyes scanning every corner. Evelyn, move! Grab Maya! She stood up, confused. What's happening? He yanked open the cabinet, inside a blinking device, a bomb. Get out! Now! He grabbed it, sprinted down the hallway, and hurled it through an open window. The explosion rocked the floor seconds later, glass shattering, alarms blaring. Evelyn screamed, shielding Maya as the lights flickered. Kelvin ran back in, coughing through smoke. We have to go, now! Security rushed in. Nurses screamed. The hospital descended into chaos again. But amidst the sirens, Kelvin caught a glimpse of a black car pulling away from the opposite side of the street. Tinted windows, diplomatic plates. He memorized the number instantly. Got you, he whispered. Hours later, the trail led him to a secluded government compound, officially abandoned, unofficially active. The same plate number matched a vehicle parked inside. He loaded his pistol and whispered to himself, for Evelyn. Sneaking through the dark corridors, he found a control room filled with surveillance monitors. On the largest screen, a man sat facing away from him, whiskey glass in hand. Kelvin raised his gun. "Turn around." The man obeyed slowly, revealing a face lined by age but radiating arrogance. Kelvin froze. "Colonel Femi?" The man smiled faintly. "Still sharp, Sergeant. I trained you well before you went rogue." Kelvin's eyes narrowed. "You were behind this?" Femi shrugged. "Adewale was a pawn. Clara was a puppet. I was the hand." "Why?" "Because your sister cost me millions," Femi said, swirling his drink lazily. "When she exposed the military's illegal health fund racket, my name almost went public, so I destroyed her credibility. Through her husband. One nudge at a time." Kelvin's hands shook with fury. "You turned her life into a living hell because of money?" Femi's voice was cold. "Because power is built on silence, and she refused to be silent." Kelvin's voice dropped. "You tried to silence the wrong family." Femi smiled, pressing a button under his desk. Instantly, alarms blared and lights turned red. Armed guards flooded the room. Kelvin fired first. Chaos erupted. Bullets ricocheting off metal walls. He ducked behind a console, returning fire with precision. 2 guards went down instantly. Another rushed him from the side. Kelvin disarmed him with a brutal strike and slammed him into the wall. Femi slipped out through a back door. Kelvin chased, blood roaring in his ears. They emerged onto the rooftop. Rain poured again, wind howling across the city skyline. Femi aimed his gun, shouting, "You can't stop what's already set in motion!" Kelvin fired. The bullet shattered the colonel's gun, sending it skidding across the wet floor. Femi laughed bitterly. "Do you think killing me changes anything? There are files, Sergeant, names, accounts. If I die, they go public, and your sister's name is tied to all of it." Kelvin hesitated, lowering his gun slightly. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Femi smirked. "She'll go down as my accomplice. Her career, her daughter's future, gone. But if you let me walk away—" Kelvin fired again. The shot tore through Femi's leg, dropping him instantly. Kelvin stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "You made one mistake, Colonel." Femi winced, clutching his bleeding thigh. "Which is?" Kelvin's eyes blazed. "You underestimated how far a soldier goes for family." He grabbed the colonel by the collar and yanked him toward the roof edge. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating their faces. "Do you believe in justice, Colonel?" Kelvin hissed. Femi sneered. "Justice is a word used by the weak." Kelvin's jaw tightened. "Then die with your own vocabulary." He shoved him backward. Femi screamed as he plunged from the rooftop, disappearing into the darkness below. Thunder cracked. Rain washed the blood from Kelvin's hands as he stood trembling, staring into the night. By sunrise, it was over. The police recovered documents from Femi's compound, evidence of years of corruption, blackmail, and manipulation. Evelyn's name was cleared publicly. The government issued statements of investigation and reform. But Kelvin knew how such stories ended. Still, when he saw Evelyn and Maya walking freely outside the hospital for the first time, sunlight touching their faces, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Evelyn hugged him tightly. "You saved us." Kelvin shook his head. "No, you survived long before I arrived." She smiled through tears. "What will you do now?" He looked toward the horizon. "Find the rest of them, one by one." Evelyn sighed. "You can't fight the whole system." Kelvin smiled faintly. "Watch me." He walked away slowly, disappearing into the rising sun, a soldier, once again, not for war, but for justice. Behind him, Evelyn whispered softly to herself, "May God forgive those who forget mercy." The camera would linger on her tear-streaked face, the golden light washing over her and Maya, symbols of endurance and rebirth, before fading to black. Then, a faint echo of the Colonel's voice would return over the credits. Justice is a word used by the weak, until the weak learn how to fight. And the screen would fade out. That was powerful and emotional. If you were Kelvin, would you have let Colonel Femi live to face trial, or done exactly what he did? Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people can feel this emotion too. Your opinion might shape our next story.